In tonight's news edition, Turkey says it will not send ground troops into neighboring Syria to fight Daesh group as a Kurdish militia makes a new advance against the militants. Israeli forces kill a Palestinian teenager during a raid in the occupied West Bank, the fourth man killed by the Israelis in over a week. And His Royal Highness Crown Prince Hussein opens the 24th of His Festival, held under the title Jordan, History and Civilization. Good evening and very warm welcome to the news. Turkish Prime Minister Ahmed Davutoglu said Ankara will not send ground troops into neighboring Syria, where it has been bombing Daesh militants. In northern Syria, near the Turkish border, the Kurdish YPG militia captured the town of Sarrin from Daesh terrorists after a month-long offensive. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said Sarrin was a launchpad for Daesh to wage raids on the Kurdish-held town of Kobani. The observatory said US-led airstrikes assisted the Kurds in the assault. The Kurdish militia has made significant gains against Daesh in Raqqa province, seizing Tel Abyad at the Turkish border and the town of Ain Isa, north of the city. In Turkey, Turkish police detained dozens of suspected Daesh and Kurdish militants in early morning raids amid a crackdown on the armed groups and airstrikes in Syria and Iraq. Long a reluctant member of the US-led coalition against Daesh, Turkey last week made a dramatic turnaround by granting the alliance access to its bases and bombarding targets in Syria linked to Daesh, as well as detaining suspected members in Turkish cities. Turkish jets also attacked Kurdish insurgent camps in Iraq for a second night last night in a campaign that could end Ankara's peace process with the Kurdistan Workers' Party, the PKK. Reports said more than 800 suspected Daesh and PKK members had been arrested in the past week. The domestic crackdown carried out alongside the airstrikes. Turkish media said some 500 police swept through a district of the capital Ankara and detained 15 Daesh suspects, 11 of them foreign. Operations also took place in the southeastern city of Adiyaman, where 19 people with alleged links to the PKK were detained. Houthi forces in Yemen carried on fighting across the country despite a ceasefire announced by the Saudi-led coalition staging airstrikes against the Iranian-backed group. Media controlled by the Houthi movement acknowledged that its forces had shelled targets inside Saudi Arabia. The Arab coalition fighting the Houthis had announced a 5-day truce to allow in emergency aid amid severe shortages of fuel, food and medicine. But the Saudi-owned Al Arabiya television reported Houthi forces shelled the northerly At-Tawal region on the Saudi border hours after the truce was meant to have started, and that Saudi forces had retaliated. A senior Houthi official said his side had not been formally notified of any ceasefire by the United Nations. Israeli forces killed a Palestinian teenager during a raid in a refugee camp in the occupied West Bank. Israeli forces have killed 3 Palestinians during raids across the West Bank in the past week. The Israeli military said 19-year-old Muhammad Abu Latifa was shot in the leg as he fled arrest in the Qalandia refugee camp near the city of Ramallah. It claimed the youth fell to his death after running along a roof and trying to jump across to another building. But his family disputed that, saying troops killed him after his arrest. Hundreds of mourners attended a funeral procession for the young man, chanting and marching through the streets of Qalandia. The occupation army said in a statement troops entered the refugee camp to arrest 2 suspected activists who planned what they called a terror attack in Israel. The killing came a day after Israeli paramilitary police injured dozens of Palestinian worshippers during a raid into the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound in occupied East Jerusalem. Iran's foreign minister was in Baghdad on the final leg of his first trip in the region since Tehran reached an agreement with world powers on the country's nuclear program. The accord has raised fears among Iran's Gulf Arab neighbors. Before traveling to Iraq, Mohammad Javad Zarif visited Kuwait and Qatar, where he called for a united front among Middle Eastern nations to fight militancy. Most Gulf Arab states are worried that Iran's July 14 accord will embolden Tehran to increase backing for Middle Eastern allies at odds with Gulf Arab countries. The Iranian minister met with top Shiite cleric Ayatollah Ali Sistani in the southern city of Najaf before meeting Iraqi officials in the capital, Baghdad. He told journalists that his trip was intended to build confidence with Iran's neighbors.
This is my first visit to the Gulf to develop the relations and open continuous discussions between the Islamic Republic of Iran and neighboring countries to achieve the interests of all countries of this region and the Islamic world, and also to achieve international peace and security. And I have had good discussions and negotiations in some countries, and I hope for the same in this critical region. We will meet the other religious authorities here in this holy city to discuss some issues.
British Prime Minister David Cameron said he's ready to order airstrikes on Daesh militant targets in Libya and Syria to prevent attacks on the streets of Britain. He was speaking to reporters after landing in Indonesia on the first leg of a 4-day trade mission he hopes to use to forge new political alliances to counter a threat he has described as a death cult. Britain raised its domestic terrorism alert to the second highest level in August last year, saying an attack was highly likely. Cameron met Indonesian President Joko Widodo to discuss how the two countries could cooperate in the battle against militants.
I've said, with respect to Libya, or indeed with respect to anywhere else, if there is a plot underway where I believe British citizens are in danger of being targeted, if it's possible to take action to stop that, I would. That is legal, that is right, that is proper, and that's the role of the Prime Minister.
British Prime Minister David Cameron there. And back here at home, His Royal Highness Crown Prince Hussein lit the flame heralding the start of the 24th Fez Festival, held under the title Jordan History and Civilization. The festival includes art exhibitions, song and dance performances, theatre and cultural events by participants from Jordan and Arab countries. Festival director Ayman Samawi said during the opening ceremony that the annual Fez Festival has been open to different cultures and innovations around the world since its launch. A number of senior officials attended the opening ceremony. Prime Minister Abdullah Mansour inaugurated a sulfur plant at the cost of 16 million euros to reduce sulfur dioxide emissions from the Jordan Petroleum Refinery Company in the eastern Zarqa Governorate. The Prime Minister said the new factory will help improve the environment and spare the local community from health hazards that had existed in the area for decades. Unveiling a commemorative plaque, he said the plant was launched just for environmental purposes and will not generate any new revenues for the country's only refinery. Chief Executive of the Jordan Petroleum Refinery Company, Abdul Karim Al-Alaween, said the new plant is part of a development and modernization scheme the company is launching, including an expansion project. The Ministry of Education will announce tomorrow the results of the General Secondary Certificate Examinations Tawjihi summer session. Ministry spokesperson Walid Jallad said Deputy Premier and Minister of Education Mohammed Al-Nebat will hold a press conference tomorrow to announce the exam's results in all streams. Jallad added that the results will be posted on the Ministry's website after the start of the press conference. The Somali militant group Al-Shabaab attacked a Mogadishu hotel, driving a car packed with explosives through the hotel gate. 13 people were killed and 21 injured, some seriously. Witnesses said blood and pieces of flesh were spattered around the site of the blast, targeting the Jazeera hotel. China's official news agency said that a Chinese national was among the dead and 3 others were injured. The Chinese embassy, whose offices are in the hotel, was also damaged in the blast. Al-Shabaab claimed responsibility for the blast. The militant group frequently stages bomb and gun attacks in the capital in its bid to topple Somalia's government. Now, let's bring to you some business news. European equities dropped to a 2-week low, recording the 5th straight daily decline amid fears for China's growth prospects. European Street, or Wall Street, also began the week in the red and fell sharply. Oil prices also fell to near 4-month lows after a steep drop in Chinese stock markets and on more evidence of a global oil supply glut that has halved prices over the past year. Chinese stocks tumbled more than 8%, the biggest one-day drop in 8 years, amid renewed fears about the outlook for the world's second largest economy. This report has more.
A steep drop in Chinese stocks had an impact on the oil market too. Prices hit a 4-month low. Brent crude for September touched $54.25 a barrel, down 37 cents. Brent was down 15 cents at $54.47, and US crude for September was down 26 cents at $47.88. Combine that with US oil producers adding 21 drilling rigs, and fears about a global glut are growing. Darren Sinden is from Admiral Markets.
There's an abundance of oil and gas products at the same time as we've got falling demand both in Europe and perhaps more importantly in Asia where historically the growth has come from.
BP, Shell and Chevron are cutting costs as a result of the fall. One new report suggests $200 billion of spending has been shelved globally. There may be benefits to consumers from low prices, but the scale of the cuts could offset that.
There'll be more money in people's pockets to spend in the shops per se, so some kind of consumer-driven demand. But the reality is the big capex projects that the oil companies are cancelling and the number of jobs that are dependent upon those, I should think that they would easily outweigh the benefits to the wider consumer.
There's no sign of an end to the low prices. Exports from Iraq's southern oil fields are reportedly on course for a monthly record. The lifting of sanctions against Iran will bring them back into the market, and Saudi Arabia and other OPEC members may increase output too. Some see low prices lasting well into next year and possibly even beyond.
US President Barack Obama told Ethiopia's leaders that allowing more political freedoms would strengthen their countries, which had already lifted millions out of poverty. Obama spoke after talks with Ethiopian Prime Minister Haile Mariam Desalegn on the first trip by a US president to Ethiopia, one of Africa's fastest growing economies. The talks also dealt with closer security cooperation with Ethiopia and the conflict in South Sudan. The Ethiopian Prime Minister acknowledged his country was a young democracy that had more to do, but he said he had minor differences with America about the speed of that process. Obama said it was essential to keep talking and keep bringing up the issue of freedoms.
More work to do, and I think the Prime Minister is the first to acknowledge that there's more work to do. The way we think about these issues is we want to engage with governments on areas of mutual concern and interest. The same way, by the way, that we deal with China and deal with a range of other countries where the democratic practices or issues around freedom of the press and the assembly are not ones that align with how we are thinking about it.
Manchester United announced the signing of Argentina national team goalkeeper Sergio Romero on their official website. Romero, who was on the losing Argentina team in both the 2014 World Cup final and the 2015 Copa America final in Chile, joins up with the squad ahead of the start of the Premier League season on August the 8th. The signing of Romero, who was a free agent having left Italian side Sampdoria, is sure to prompt further questions over the future of current Manchester United number 1, David De Gea, who has been linked with a move to Real Madrid. Mexico beat Jamaica with a dominant 3-1 triumph, spoiling Jamaica's first trip to the CONCACAF Gold Cup final. Jamaica had become the first Caribbean team to reach the final, but L3 stole the storyline at Philadelphia's Lincoln Financial Field by winning their Cup championship from the last 4 played. Despite a fast and inspired start by the Jamaicans, Mexico quickly turned the tide and got goals from Andres Guardado, Jesus Corona and Oribe Peralta. Mexico will now play the United States on October the 9th in a playoff for the region's berth in the 2017 FIFA Confederations Cup. Now, the weather outlook. Hot and dry conditions will continue tomorrow in most parts of the country, with high clouds, mainly in the eastern regions. Winds will be northwesterly moderate to brisk at times, blowing dust in the desert areas. The Jordan Valley and the port city of Aqaba should, of course, expect a very hot weather, with temperatures there hovering around the low 40s. Next are the lows and highs for tonight and tomorrow. To close our top stories once again. Turkey says it will not send ground troops into neighboring Syria to fight Daesh group as a Kurdish militia makes a new advance against the militants. Israeli forces kill a Palestinian teenager during a raid in the occupied West Bank, the fourth man killed by the Israelis in over a week. And His Royal Highness Crown Prince Hussein opens the 24th of Hayes Festival, held under the title Jordan History and Civilization. And that's the end of tonight's news. My name is Raad Labdouj. Thank you so much for your time. Have a good night.